I'm 85 years old, and there is a sentence I never allowed myself to finish. I don't know who I really am. For most of my life, I was someone else, someone easier to accept, someone more convenient, someone safer. I spent years trying to be the man I thought people wanted, not the man I actually was. People saw me as steady, reliable, put together. They thought I had myself figured out. I didn't. I was just very good at pretending. I learned early that being yourself can be risky, that certain parts of you make people uncomfortable, that some truths get punished with silence. So I adjusted. I softened what was too honest. I hid what was too strange. I swallowed what was too emotional. Little by little, I became a version of myself that fit better, not happier, just easier. I remember a night when I was in my late 30s, sitting alone in my car outside my house, engine off, lights off, just sitting there because I didn't feel ready to go inside. Nothing bad had happened, no fight, no disaster, just a heavy feeling in my chest, a thought that scared me. I don't recognize my own life. I looked at the house, nice house, good neighborhood, everything I had once said I wanted, and I felt nothing, not sadness, not joy, just empty. I told myself, this is normal. Everyone feels like this. This is what being an adult is. So I went inside and kept playing my role. That's how it starts, not with a breakdown, with a quiet agreement to disappear. I didn't start pretending as an adult. I started as a boy. I grew up in a house where feelings were not discussed. You didn't talk about fear. You didn't talk about sadness. You didn't talk about confusion. You worked, you behaved, you kept moving. My father believed a man showed love by providing, not by speaking, not by hugging, by showing up and paying the bills. That was his language. So I learned that words were unnecessary and emotions were dangerous. When I cried once as a child, I don't even remember what it was about, but I remember what he said. Stop that. Be a man. He didn't mean to hurt me. He was repeating what had been taught to him. But something inside me closed that day. I learned soft is bad, sensitive is weak, different is risky. So I became useful. I became agreeable. I became good at reading rooms, good at sensing what people wanted, good at becoming that. Teachers liked me, bosses liked me, neighbors liked me, and slowly I stopped asking myself if I liked me. I picked careers that sounded respectable, not ones that interested me. I married the woman everyone said was a good match, not the woman I felt alive around. I wore the right clothes, laughed at the right jokes, held the right opinions. From the outside, I looked successful. From the inside, I felt like I was living someone else's script. But I told myself, this is what you do. You don't chase feelings. You don't chase authenticity. You chase stability. So I did, and I got it, and I was still empty. That's the cruel part. You can do everything right and still feel wrong. As I got older, I didn't become myself. I became better at acting. I wore the mask of the responsible man, the dependable man, the man who never complains. People trusted me. They came to me for advice. They said I was solid, strong. I nodded. Inside, I felt hollow. I learned how to keep conversations safe, talk about work, talk about the weather, talk about sports, anything but what I actually felt. If someone asked how I was doing, I said, fine, always fine. Fine became my personality. I stayed busy on purpose. Busy is a great hiding place. If you're always moving, no one notices you're lost. Not even you. I told myself stories. I'll figure myself out later. I'll be more honest when things calm down. I'll start living after I retire. Later became decades. I avoided anything that reminded me of who I really was. Music I loved as a teenager, books that made me feel too much, dreams that didn't fit my image. I called them childish, impractical. But the truth was simpler. They scared me because they felt alive, and I hadn't felt alive in a long time. There's a special kind of pain that comes from watching yourself slowly fade, not because of one big tragedy, but because of 1,000 small betrayals. Each time you say, "It's not important," each time you choose approval over truth, each time you stay silent, those moments stack until one day you don't remember what your real voice sounds like. The moment that finally broke through my denial didn't happen at work, didn't happen at home. It happened at a funeral, not for someone I was especially close to. An old acquaintance, a man I had known for years. We weren't friends, we weren't enemies, we were familiar. The kind of person you nod to, small talk, weather, life, that's it. I stood in the back of the room, listening to people describe him. They said, he was a good worker. He was reliable. He always showed up. They meant well, but that was all they could say. No stories, no moments, no laughter, no mention of who he really was. I remember thinking, that can't be the sum of a human life. And then a colder thought followed. What if that's all anyone will say about me? Good worker, reliable, always showed up. Nothing about what I loved, nothing about what moved me, nothing about who I was inside. I felt sick, not physically, existentially. I went home that night and sat alone in the dark. No TV, no phone, just me, and a question I had avoided my entire life. If no one is watching, who am I? I didn't know. That terrified me, because if you don't know who you are, you can't honestly say you've lived. You've only existed. That night, I didn't make a promise. I didn't suddenly change. I just admitted something. I have been hiding from myself. That admission was the beginning. Here is the first hard truth I learned. Approval feels good, but it cannot tell you who you are. It can only tell you how well you're performing. I had built my entire sense of self around reactions. A nod from my boss, a compliment from a neighbor, "You're a good man." Those things felt warm for a moment, then they faded. So I needed another hit, another achievement, another reason to feel acceptable. It never ended, because approval is a moving target. What impressed people yesterday is expected today. What makes you valuable today is replaceable tomorrow. I kept thinking, if I just become a little better, a little more impressive, then I'll finally feel solid inside. That day never came, because you cannot build a self out of other people's opinions. It's like trying to build a house out of smoke. Looks real from a distance, disappears when you touch it. I realized something painful. Most people were not rejecting the real me. They had never even met the real me. They were reacting to a character I created, and I was exhausted from playing him. Here's the part nobody tells you. You don't lose yourself all at once. You lose yourself one small compromise at a time. One time you laugh at a joke you don't find funny. One time you agree when you don't agree. One time you stay quiet when something matters to you. Those moments seem harmless. They're not. They slowly teach you your truth is inconvenient, so you stop offering it, and eventually you forget it exists. Here is the second hard truth. Living as someone else is expensive, not in money, in years, in energy, in quiet regret. You don't feel the cost right away. That's what makes it dangerous. At first, it feels safer, blending in, not rocking the boat, doing what's expected. But over time, something inside you starts to ache, not sharply, dully, like a background hum. You feel restless even when life is calm. You feel bored even when you're busy. You feel lonely even when you're surrounded by people. I felt all three. I didn't know why. So I did what I always did. I worked more, stayed busy, filled every empty space. Silence scared me because silence asked questions I didn't want to answer. I lost years I will never get back. Years I could have spent exploring who I was, what I loved, what kind of life actually fit me. Instead, I perfected a life that looked good and felt wrong. There is a special grief that comes from realizing I could have lived differently, not better. Differently, more honestly. That grief doesn't scream, it whispers at night, in quiet rooms, when no one is watching. You start mourning a version of yourself that never got to exist. That's a heavy thing to carry. Here is the third hard truth. The fear of being yourself is usually worse than the reality of being yourself. I spent decades imagining worst-case scenarios. If I'm honest, I'll be rejected. If I change, I'll be alone. If I show who I really am, I'll lose everything. Those thoughts felt real. They felt logical. They were stories. Stories built by a younger version of me, trying to stay safe. But safety and aliveness are not the same thing. You can be very safe and very dead inside. When I finally started being a little more honest, something surprising happened. Some people drifted away, not dramatically, not angrily. They just stopped calling. That hurt. But something else happened too. A few people leaned closer. They started talking more honestly with me. They shared things they had never shared before because honesty invites honesty. I realized something important. The people who only liked the mask were never really connected to me. They were connected to a performance. Losing that connection is not tragedy. It's clarity. You don't need a large audience. You need a small circle where you can breathe, where you don't have to translate yourself, where you don't have to pretend. That kind of connection is impossible if you are hiding. I didn't wake up one day and become a new man. I didn't change everything at once. I started with honesty, small, uncomfortable honesty. I began asking myself simple questions. What do I actually enjoy? What drains me? What feels true? At first, I didn't have many answers because I hadn't asked in a long time. So I paid attention. I noticed which conversations gave me energy, which ones left me exhausted, which activities made time disappear, which ones felt heavy. I started allowing myself to like what I liked, even if it didn't make sense, even if it didn't look impressive. I listened to music I loved as a teenager. I read books I used to hide. I spent more time alone, not isolating, meeting myself. I began telling people the truth in small ways. I don't actually enjoy that. I need some time alone. I don't agree. Not to be cruel, not to start fights, just to stop lying. Some people were confused. Some didn't like it. That was hard. But I felt lighter. For the first time in decades, I felt real. That feeling is quiet, but it's steady. It doesn't spike like approval. It doesn't crash like praise. It simply exists. And that is enough. Here is the fourth hard truth. You do not have unlimited time to become yourself. I lived most of my life assuming I'll figure it out later. when things calm down, after retirement. Later is a comfortable lie because later feels safe. Later doesn't demand courage. Later doesn't force decisions. But later quietly turns into never. One day you look around and realize decades passed, not because you were lazy, not because you were stupid, but because you kept postponing your own life. Time doesn't move loudly. It moves in ordinary days. Mondays, errands, dinners, sleep, wake up, repeat. That's why it's so easy to miss. No one taps you on the shoulder and says, "You have 10 years left." You only realize time is precious when most of it is already behind you. At 85, the future is small. That's not depressing. It's clarifying. It strips away illusions. You stop asking, "What will people think?" and start asking, "Can I live with myself like this?" That question matters more because at the end, you don't sit with your boss. You don't sit with strangers. You sit with your own mind, your own memories, your own choices. I wish I had understood sooner that becoming yourself is not selfish. It is your responsibility because no one else can do it for you. No one else can live your life. No one else can feel your truth. Waiting to be yourself is the most expensive delay. If you take nothing else from my story, take this. You don't need permission to be yourself. You never did. Not from your parents, not from your partner, not from society, not from me. I spent years trying to be someone else, and it cost me my own life, not all at once, slowly, quietly, in ways no one else could see. At 85, I don't wish I had been more impressive. I don't wish I had been more successful. I don't wish I had pleased more people. I wish I had been more honest with others and with myself. You are not broken. You are not too late. You're not wrong for wanting a different life. You are human. If there is a small voice inside you, the one you keep ignoring, that's not weakness. That's truth. Listen to it. Say one honest sentence today. Make one small change. Stop pretending in one place. That is enough to begin, because becoming yourself does not happen in one big moment. It happens in many small, brave ones. If this message meant something to you, let me know in the comments. And if you want more honest conversations like this, subscribe. Not for me, for the version of you that deserves to exist.